Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. This is Theater Talk. I'm Susan Haskins. The Tonys were last Sunday with the wonderful Whoopi Goldberg presiding over a bunch of kind of dismal awards. So here we've brought our guests to
I think that's unfair, dismal. There was some
there were some great ones too. Deanna
that
Dunnigan, she's the coolest. Now, here's Michael Riedel of the New York Post to introduce our guests.
The only reason Susan thinks the Tony Awards were dismal because the best comedy in a generation, Boeing, won Best Revival.
Michael, did you see Boeing?
And Susan hates that
did
show.
Did you see Boeing?
Part of Boeing, but I saw part of Boeing. We just saw Boeing. I had an early flight to go. I couldn't stay. But what I saw was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. And I predicted it was going to win the Tony Award for Best Revival. I got many other things right, too, but a few things wrong. But our guests tonight got, I think, almost a full slate when they were on the other week predicting Tony Awards. They got a lot more right than I did. And so we brought them back to kind of pick over the Tony Awards and look ahead a little bit to the upcoming Broadway season. So we're joined tonight by Michael Musto, you're looking a little bit like Claude Rains in The Invisible Man with the cast there and the glasses.
I prefer Clifton Webb and Laura, but I'll take that. I had rough sex with Patti LuPone, which involved trying to get that Tony back and give it to Kelly O'Hara. It didn't work.
Jesse Green, a contributing editor to New York Magazine. Always a pleasure to have you. And my old friend Patrick Pacheco from the Hood, representing the Tony Award-winning musical In the Heights.
Yes, my people, mi gente.
God. Patrick Pacheco from New York One and the Los Angeles Times. Welcome.
Thanks.
Michael, what happened? I predicted Passing Strange, and what I say is the way the theater industry really goes. And the show kind of trumped
in the opposite direction.
By In the Heights.
Well, here's a newsflash, Michael. The people who vote, like myself, have seen the shows. You come you can pick someone off the street which has the same kind of know-how of what's actually on the stage as you do. So I think you're brilliant. And the most powerful man writing in theater.
Thank you.
But the voters really reflected what they liked the best. And In the Heights is a more conventional show with a through line. There's no real lead character actually in the Heights. The neighborhood is the star. But people like the effect of that show rather than a kind of amorphous, Passing Strange rock musical posing as a story.
Right. Now,
okay, well then I want to get into it right now. What's up with Boeing?
Huh? It was funny.
No, I mean, who are those Tony voters who picked Boeing?
The ones who want a going concern. The ones who want a play that's going to make money and possibly a straight play, even tour. Could it be? It's possible.
And vote
just
for
because you hated it and I wasn't a big fan of it either.
And nobody here liked it.
It was fun.
Yes, but how rich are we? You see, this is the problem.
Patrick, though, I think Jesse's touching on something that seems to have been the kind of theme of the evening, that the commercial shows really are the ones that, by and large, are going to win a Tony Award. Between In the Heights, which was going to have a tour and seem more commercial than Passing Strange, and Boeing, which is a genuine commercial hit. I mean, is this just a business now of the rich people who award shows that are financial hits over quality?
Well, In the Heights really needed the Tony. Unlike, say, South Pacific.
Well, I got news for you. Passing Strange could have used it as well.
It could, but oftentimes you've got a juggernaut that's like, the producers that, the Tony really isn't that relevant to. But I think that basically the Tony voter just votes possibly their pocketbook, but they also vote on what they enjoy the most. And I think they just had a much better time at Boing than they had at the other, revivals. Les Liaisons Dangereuses and Homecoming and Macbeth.
Not that hard.
Well, the two plays that picked up most of the awards for non-musicals were August Osage County and Boeing, and they are the two that are going concerns, possibly also 39 Steps, which got a few awards as well. But if you look at the other plays that were up for awards, they're all closed or scheduled to close soon anyway. Macbeth, Rock and Roll, November, Homecoming, Is He Dead, Top Girls, Liaison, Seafarer. But you also have to say, it may be that some of these shows sometimes run and look likely to make money because they are good. It can happen.
A producer said to me today, Michael, that he thought Passing Strange didn't win because everyone knew was struggling at the box office, and that even giving it a Tony Award would probably not help it. And he said, we don't really want to waste the Tony Award on a show that's not going to make it.
I try to go for actually voting my heart. And,
So is the
I'm
ballot
making
empty?
myself nauseous.
Is the ballot empty then?
So I just send in the blank thing. I check Greece, and that was it.
That's right.
But I don't think the voters are that complicated. I don't.
Yeah.
I think
I
you get it
agree.
in the mail, and you kind of vote for what you like.
I don't think they're individually strategic. It's a group thing that happens when we examine it later to try to see what were they thinking, but there is no they. Is there?
No, nobody gets a memo saying, let's as a group vote for this because of that reason.
No, but we should point out that the majority of the voters are commercial producers. I mean, they make up the vast majority of the Tony voters.
But even they are capable, aren't they, of making judgments not based on money? Oh, you're right. Never mind.
But I don't want to dwell on a point, but when
Boeing, you can't give it up, Susan. It won.
But I felt like I did when George Bush first got elected. I thought, what are people thinking?
There's a great advertising line for them. As good as George Bush. Susan Haskins.
Air Force One, Boeing.
Taste. Different
Yeah.
people have different taste.
Yeah.
I love the idea of promoting something that's kind of light and frothy, so I feel bad kind of dumping on this show. I'm usually the kind of guy going, let's vote for something that's not Macbeth. But in this case, Macbeth, to me, was a towering achievement. It was brilliantly acted, and it was a concept that really took it to an extreme. Boeing was just a tired businessman's sex comedy.
Well, you're talking about
Dated.
Broadway producers. Tired businessmen.
But the voters are
That's what
old.
they didn't like Fast Train.
And I guess none of them were women.
Let's talk about
Right.
the Tony telecast itself, because many people, myself included, think it was the best in years.
Yeah.
Whoopi Goldberg did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You just told me that it's the lowest rated telecast in 17 years.
That was the headline in one of the press releases that came through earlier today.
Good press agent.
First of all, Patrick, what did you think about the telecast, and why do you think the ratings still were abysmal when it was a lively little show?
There wasn't a lot of big names among the Tony nominations, and also it was up against the basketball finals. Not
And
the
some
people that
golf
watched the
thing.
basketball finals
Yeah.
were actually about to go.
Some golf thing, the U.S. Open, Tiger Woods.
We theater people don't know from these games with balls.
But I thought it was a very good. I thought they did a very good job of the show.
But it's almost like the
And-
nominating committee resolutely said, we're not going to nominate any big names. We're not going for Frances McDormand, Morgan Freeman, etc.
Did you
but
see
they-
their
but-
performances?
Yeah.
Right, they suck. But then the producers of the Tonys said, well, we're going to try to circumvent that by
Yeah.
throwing in celebrity drop-ins and
The
old
Little
musicals.
Mermaid.
It started with a number from Lion King.
Oh, that
for
was
God's
wonderful.
sake.
That
It
was
was
wonderful.
but
I
it
thought that
screamed the Tonys are obsolete. We have to dig up an 11-year-old number
I don't
to
think that-
rouse the masses in Kalamazoo.
I don't think there is a single thing they could have put on the show at the beginning, middle, or end that would have gotten one more person than the 6.1 million who watched it.
Yeah.
That's just who there is out there to appeal to. Got to work with it.
And there's nothing you can do about it. What did you think?
That's how many gays are out there.
No, if only all gays like theater, we'd be in a much better situation.
What did you think of Whoopi Goldberg?
I thought she did fine. They tried a Billy Crystal effect where they dumped her into kind of little scenarios from different hit musicals. That didn't quite work as well as Billy Crystal's medley always used to do.
I loved it
on the
when she was
Oscars.
in Spring
But she
Awakening.
was
Yeah, that was
very
the best
tame,
one, wasn't
and
it?
She was very cute, and her racial commentary kind of was very right for this year with Obama running for president. Because she made racial little remarks about the oppression of black people. And that
Yeah, like Passing Strange losing the Tony Award to In the Heights.
to Dominicans. Don't
Dominicans.
pit people against each other, Michael.
No, and someone made the point to me that In the Heights does open the door to a whole new audience for Broadway. Stu, and you know I love him, he's a very rarefied being in terms of his artistic experience, whereas as In the Heights is saying to this entire Latino community,
Come on over and
Come
watch us
on.
do jumping jacks for 3.5 hours. That's what he's saying.
Come on, watch us do 80s rap.
I had fun at the show. My kids, and I say this not just to advertise the fact that yes, in fact, I have children, despite what you might think, but also because they're.
But you're still gay, though, right?
Still gay, but they're the next generation, right? They're 14 and 12. They were completely swept away by In the Heights.
Wasn't his acceptance speech wonderful? Lin-Manuel Miranda's acceptance
At first, I
Can
wanted
that
to
guy-
strangle him,
I
but
know,
by
can
the
that
end, he
guy
had
put
me.
two sentences together without rhyming? Isn't that tired?
Tired, but the
I
guy's
thought
so
it was
wired. No. Look, Sondheim didn't show up for his own award, I think, because Lin-Manuel mentioned him in that rap.
And he got up and left. He's like, I'm
I
outta
thought that
here.
was
This is my
touching.
career.
I thought that was touching, the reference to Sondheim in Lin-Manuel.
All right, so we've had the Tonys now, and let's look. What is the status of these shows? The ones who won, the ones that didn't on Broadway. Who's going to win? Who's going to live, and who's going to die? Patrick.
Well, certainly Into the Heights is going to get a major bump. I think you mentioned that it did what, $800,000 in business now,
Something like that.
You know, the interesting thing about a show like In the Heights, in terms of its longevity, is say Spring Awakening, which won 8 Tony Awards as opposed to the 4,
And was good.
is still doing about $300,000 a week. You know, whereas a lot of the Tonys that weren't even nominated, or a lot of the shows that weren't even nominated, and shows that didn't win Tonys, are doing 3 times that. You know, The Little Mermaid and other ones. So it'll be interesting to see the longevity of it, but certainly it'll fuel its you know, a much longer run than had it not won the Tony. The ones that are the other 3 shows, obviously, Xanadu, Crybaby, and Passing Strange, are going to have a rough time.
Yeah, how long did you give Passing Strange, Michael?
I don't care. But frankly, I thought Catered Affair didn't come off that well in its little
No.
numbers. Sorry, Jesse.
They should
Oh,
have
I know your
Harvey come
favorite
in.
show. I forgot about that. Yeah, you
They
can't.
better
Faith
get-
Prince is wonderful, but
Get
they
Joey
put in
Fatone in there fast.
Yeah.
Not to do a whole Patty is God again thing,
Yeah.
but her performance of Everything's Coming Up Roses was volcanic. It was unbelievable.
And I love that she thanked Rose, the real Rose Hovack, in her speech.
Do you
I thought
think
that was
Bernadette
quite
Peters
wonderful.
was watching
Yeah.
Patty do
Yeah.
that excerpt of Gypsy on the telecast?
I don't know,
I
why
saw
don't you
her in the
call
back.
her?
I saw her,
You
and
were
she
so
wasn't
bad.
standing. But Naja was. And Naja does a great version of Shum People.
You've turned her into Carol Channing.
I mix them all together.
All right, well, we're almost out of time, but let's just shift now. The 2007-2008 season is behind us, and already we're moving into a very interesting and very competitive new Broadway season.
Yeah.
We've got 3 big shows coming with major people attached to it.
Billy
Billy
Elliot.
Elliot, Elton John's
Yeah.
musical, 9 to 5, Dolly Parton's musical, and Shrek, Janine Tesori's musical,
Yeah.
DreamWorks musical.
Yeah.
Are you getting any sense on the early returns on the horse race there, Patrick?
Certainly Billy Elliot, I think, is the musical to beat at this point. But usually when there is a musical to beat, somebody beats it.
We've been in a pattern recently of sharing the wealth with the awards. Several shows have been spreading it, and so to speak, and that's worked out pretty well. And I think we're going to see it again next year, because the 3 shows you mentioned, even just those 3, and there's others as well, are different kinds of shows that appeal to different kinds of audiences.
Yeah. And anything out there, Michael, that you're really looking forward to? In the coming
Billy
season?
Elliot, I think, looks really exciting from the bit that I saw at a press preview. I think Shrek will be the young Frankenstein, a big, bloated, multi-million-dollar thing that might make a lot of
green.
money,
Yeah.
but is not going to win that many awards.
And let us hope that there are more August Osage County type things that come out of the hinterlands
Do we hear?
and
Do
original
any of you
works.
hear of any interesting? Well, you're
Yeah.
more tuned into the artistic world than we are. Do you hear any good plays out there? Anything?
There's this playwright called Chekhov I keep hearing about. He's wonderful. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, right.
Well, there is Kristen Scott Thomas is coming in The Seagull.
Right. That could be good. Yeah.
How can I order tickets now?
All right. Well, we'll have you guys back when the season is up and running in the fall. In the meantime, have a great summer. Thanks for all your help this year on Theater Talk. Patrick Pacheco from
New York One?
LA Times.
Thank you, Michael.
And Michael Musto from the Village
Rough
Voice.
sex?
This is PBS, Michael.
And Papa Jesse Green from New York Magazine. Thanks a lot and good to see you.
Some enchanted evening, when you find your true love, when you feel her call you across a crowded room.
The most successful show of this season is the revival of the 1949 musical South Pacific. And we're really happy to have with us now the guy who's totally responsible for this fabulous production.
Now, you might think we have Richard Rodgers here or Oscar Hammerstein, perhaps.
Okay.
But they weren't available for our South Pacific show. So we've settled for someone who's just as talented, just as good. The wonderful director Bartlett Sher, who has given us a really handsome production of South Pacific at Lincoln Center. Following up on your great success with Adam Guettle's musical Light in the Piazza that you also directed, and Awake and Sing that you directed for Lincoln Center. So welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you. Thanks. Great to be here.
Now I got to ask you first, though, about your Emile Debec in this production. Someone that none of us in the theater have ever seen before, Paulo Schott, I believe his name is.
That's right.
Fabulous. I mean, really rivals, I think, Ezio Pinza. How did you come across Paulo Schott?
Well, it was sort of a long process. We have Bernie Telsey Casting, and they were the people who did La Boheme, so they were familiar with the opera world. They had to look everywhere. We actually interviewed and talked to many, many, many very famous bass baritones, many of whom wouldn't do it because of tax reasons or
What
tax reason?
Because you don't want to spend more than a certain number of days in the United States,
you've got to pay.
or else you have to pay taxes, so you're not going to come and stay that long. Maybe didn't want to work that many days in a row. I don't know, a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And we auditioned people from all over the world, really. And Paolo walked in, and he was, of course, incredibly handsome
Well, that's the
and
thing.
beautiful.
So handsome.
I was worried he was a little too young, except that the real story, Debec is only 44, and when Pinza did it, they sort of elevated the age a bit and changed the story a bit. And we were just, incredibly lucky to have him.
Where's he from?
He is from Brazil, but he's actually Polish. His family emigrated from Poland to Brazil, where he was raised.
Now, any concerns, though, directing opera singers? Because opera singers are not all known for their great acting chops. I mean, that must have been a key issue for you to find someone who can act a musical theater role.
It's different kind of acting. I think the big concern between Paolo and I was that when he wasn't singing, because in opera, the music controls the action.
Yeah.
So you feel this thing sort of pulling you along. And then you could tell early on that he was his big effort was to kind of transition into actually speaking, and feeling comfortable in that took a long time. But like anything, he just got better and better and better and better and better, and now he's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, he's a really, really fine actor.
The other thing he does incredibly well is he's very good at putting what a lot of leading men don't know to do is put all the focus on your partner,
Kelly O'Hara.
Kelly, and they're both really have a great chemistry together, and so they're both good at that.
Is South Pacific a show that you've always wanted to direct, or did Lincoln Center come to you and say, would you take a stab
I
at
really
this one?
think, I think the person who's the most responsible for it and is the most, for whom it's the greatest passion, is Andre Bishop, the head of Lincoln Center. He's always wanted to do it. And when we were even in the middle of Light in the Piazza, he had talked to me about the possibility of approaching Rodgers and Hammerstein finally, and if I was interested in doing it. I went back and read it again. I had never seen it.
Really?
I have to admit. No.
Have you seen the movie or the?
I'd seen.
Indifferent movie,
I'd begun the movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember actually finishing it, so I hadn't seen it. Went back and read it, and in reading it, I was, found it incredible, and very relevant. And it was this very similar experience to Awake and Sing. Going back to it, thinking one thing about it, and then reading it and going, "This is not at all what I imagined."
So
it
what
was.
changed in your what
And what did you find in it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
what did you find?
Well, the thing is that I think I was probably most attracted to Josh Logan's world. Having just come out of Awake and Sing, I was interested in his devotion to the Moscow Art Theater, his studying with Stanislavski, and how he was really a man of real deep realism. So you could read in the text the opportunity to explore the real heart of the work and the writing, and you could feel that, and you could feel their exploration of racism and all these things in it that were deeply real against this music. And from my point of view, the connection to that was what was so impressive.
It's a very good point, because like the two of you, I was familiar with the music, but not so much the show.
Yeah.
And I was struck by the context of Happy Talk.
Yeah.
Because you hear, it's like a nice little Rodgers and Hammerstein ditty, and then when it's done that Bloody Mary's trying to prostitute her daughter
Correct.
to Lieutenant Cable, Happy Talk suddenly takes on a much darker shade to it.
And what we know is, third world poverty, when it encounters a first world sort of universe, there's a desperate need to get out of that poverty. Yeah. So she's willing to go to any lengths. And the other thing that was weird about seeing was looking back down the sort of corridor of time toward the show. Between it is Korea and Vietnam and Iraq. So all these other experiences of, without sounding too political, imperial engagements abroad, and our experience of that affected how you could look at South Pacific now. So you look at Cable differently through the lens of post-traumatic stress. You look at the characters and the desperation of where they are. You look at how different we were. All these things were resonating as I read it, and I thought, well, it may be good, especially when we're in a kind of chaotic time as a country, to renew how you feel about who we were and how artists approach that, and look at who we are now and see what kind of things could
And
resonate.
I had a conversation with somebody about the racism thing, that someone said to me, well, why would Nellie want to not be with him just because his children are black? Not realizing, but not realizing the depth of the racism of that time.
Yeah, and we're in the middle of it now.
Yeah,
and,
we certainly are.
I was
Yeah.
lucky enough to, Rodgers and Hammerstein gave me the original scripts they had, so I did take a couple of pages of stuff that they cut in '48. So you hear words like colored, which you didn't hear in the original script. In the original production, and other things with Cable talking about I couldn't bring her home because if we had a housewarming nobody would come.
Oh,
things
good,
that
yeah.
That's all restored in the
And
script.
you restored My Girl Back Home, right?
My Girl
Yeah,
Back Home,
yeah.
which I moved from the second act to the first act.
Yeah.
But all of that really allowed me to know that I could explore the scenes and they would release into the songs beautifully. And frankly, I'm a big fan of American theater artists, and I think that they were exploring very serious and incredible things and connecting it to musicals. And they're our sort of ancestors, and that's something I feel good about doing, as a classicist, sort of.
Yeah. Having seen your production the other night, it sent me running to the bookstore to pick up Michener's book, Tales of the South Pacific.
Yeah.
Did you begin there when you began thinking about this book?
I reread the book, partly because, and to be astonished by what Hammerstein and Logan did with the book, but because that language is such a great, sort of fairy tale beginning and connective tissue. And
It
I think
bookends your production. You begin with a screen with the opening paragraphs of Michener's work.
Yeah, and again, I was trying to find those links of certain kinds of American artists and American voices, and his voice is very much behind the whole story, the way he captures a Bloody Mary or a Billis or a, even a Brackett. All those sort of, that world is very much his descriptions, his filling that in, and then the, Hammerstein, Logan, and Rodgers capturing them.
And his very recent experience, because wasn't Michener...
He was there.
He was there, yeah.
He was there, and he really had that experience of what we call Bally Highness.
Yeah.
You go to a foreign place, you get your head blown open, and you get transformed by this experience of being abroad, and these kids, Americans waking up to a whole world they had no idea was there.
Now, with South Pacific, you've put together kind of a nice, if you will, Bartlett Sher company of actors and designers.
Yeah.
Kelly O'Hara and Matthew
Yeah.
Morrison were both in Light and Piazza, and you've used the same designer.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, his name is...
Kathy Zuber, Michael Jurgen. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is this going to be the Bartlett Sher team as you move from show to show?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like it to be, in the sense that, for me, the best experience would be Kelly and a Shakespeare next, or to Kelly and Danny and Paolo in a Shakespeare next. The thing is that I find that theater deepens with a kind of extended experience. So working with the same people over and over again, I get better. I get more connected. I like that kind of family. And so I do like to stay with the same people.
I wonder where you and your designer picks up the way it with having seen Light in the Piazza and the beautiful design, but the thinking and the design which your staging feeds into, and it's just you're working together.
Well, you have the
such a
advantage
way.
of the Beaumont, but the nature of space we could have a whole program about the way space
Well,
can
say a
expand
little
and
about what
contract.
you've done with the space there.
Yeah, you take a space like the Beaumont, which is the only place you can make a movie and a musical at the same time because it's so big.
Yeah.
And you can expand it and contract it. So it's basically a large beach with one palm tree. And a lot of old-fashioned things like real painted drops and back painted drops for Bally High and things like that. I don't go so much in for projection type things. But you can close down and expand a space a lot. And we pull the deck back to reveal the orchestra.
Yes.
And you get a huge round of
Yeah.
applause
Huge
because
round of
who
applause.
sees an orchestra of how many people in it?
30 people.
30 people.
And in discussing with Andre, it was like, this helps people learn how to listen.
Yeah.
Helps
Yes.
them learn to appreciate, because otherwise they sit in this weird in-between place with them all tucked under the
And
deck.
there's this canned
And
sound coming.
Yeah, and also to make it as acoustic a sound as possible. And sometimes I say it's like an analog experience in a digital world.
Yeah.
This experience of South Pacific, because when you really get inside the real sound of it, it actually operates physically on you differently.
Yes, and they're opening their mouths, and it's like they're singing.
Yeah, and actually where the sound is coming from is where the person happens to
I
be.
know it's a remarkable experience sitting through it. I thought that too because I've seen a couple of other Broadway shows lately, which must remain nameless, and you see the people up there talking, and the voice is coming from over there.
It's a big part of what Andre is committed to.
Yeah.
Really, really making sure the sound feels that way. I'd worked at the Metropolitan Opera where you have that kind of experience, and it's irreplaceable. That stuff. Adam Gettle's the same way about it. Really making sure you can really actually hear it. like our Sitzprobe for South Pacific was
That's the first time the orchestra
first time we
played.
all sit down to a reading, we're in a room. It's literally emotionally and physically overwhelming to be that close to those instruments and hear those voices and have that happen. And you want the audience to have the same experience. And people go, well, it's so emotional. Well, after enough time with that rich a sound that comes from deep in some American psychic place, you really begin to open up and find yourself connecting up, you know, to being an American, to being a part of a tradition, to being a part of a theater-going tradition. The whole thing kind of falls into sequence. And that's, I just want to shepherd that. I just want to be responsible to that kind of tradition.
Well, it's a terrific production of South Pacific at Lincoln Center, directed by Bartlett Sher. What are you going on to do next?
I'm going to Salzburg, Austria, to direct Romeo et Juliet.
Oh, the Gounod,
the opera,
right?
yes, in the same space that The Sound of Music finishes at the end of the movie.
Oh, you just
Very
can't get away
strange.
from
I know.
Oh,
No,
is
it's really
that?
beautiful. It's going to be kind of fun. It's, you know, it's kind of a big adventure.
Oh,
and
yeah, it'd be great.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that.
Thanks.
All right. Good to talk to you. Thanks for being our guest tonight.
Thank you.
There is nothing like a day.